Folks, Matt Dragonstone here with a quick and very shameless self-promotion for my website dragonstoneastrology.com. If you head over there, you can see everything that I do when I'm not recording podcasts. You can get readings live or pre-recorded. You can browse some of the finest astrological talismans available on the market today. Check out my books, Tarot for the Spiritual Seeker and Lunar Wisdom. See my courses, Tarot Foundations, view my articles, and much, much more. So if you're stuck for things to do this afternoon, go and check out dragonstoneastrology.com and have your mind blown. And now on with the episode.
Breaking overnight, U.S. Israeli strikes hit Iranian missile sites.
Mass white-collar layoffs confirmed today at Baker McKenzie.
Infrastructure. Escalations began February 28th,
Displacement surging, global realignment underway, supply chains fracturing, families fleeing
and drone barrages now raining down across the region.
Energy markets reeling from immediate shocks.
In a world of sudden wars and vanishing careers, where do hope and resilience come from? Welcome back to the Dragonstone podcast. This is a series of episodes that asks how timeless teachings can help us navigate today's geopolitical and technological turmoil. I'm your host, Matt Dragonstone. This is episode 2, and today we turn to one of humanity's most profound texts, the Bhagavad Gita, for insights into hope and resilience. Across these episodes, we're examining how ancient wisdom mitigates the unique forms of suffering experienced in the West today. We're spotlighting two defining 21st century crises that are reshaping lives right now. First, the current geopolitical state of the world, marked by the 2026 Iran war. We're living through its global realignment. U.S. Israeli strikes on missile sites, leadership targets, and infrastructure that began on February 28th, retaliatory barrages, regional energy shocks, mass displacements, and the moral dilemmas of conflict that leave so many of us gripped by uncertainty and fear. Second, AI-driven disruption to white-collar work. Knowledge-based roles like coding, consulting, law, management, administration, are all being rapidly automated. We're seeing mass layoffs at firms like Baker McKenzie, Salesforce, and KPMG. Record unemployment spikes for bachelor's degree holders. And professionals forced to pivot to trades amid deep fears that their economic security, professional identity, and even sense of purpose are slipping away. These aren't abstract headlines. For many of you listening, middle-class professionals navigating uncertainty, they're daily realities. They create a particular kind of modern suffering. External chaos colliding with an inner erosion of stability and meaning. The overarching focus of this series is powerful and simple. Ancient wisdom doesn't promise to fix the world or let us escape it. Instead, it equips us to endure and find meaning amid the suffering by transforming our inner response to it. And that brings us to today. In this episode, we dive deep into the Bhagavad Gita, a 700-verse dialogue set on an ancient battlefield that still speaks directly to our modern times. Let's begin with what the text is actually about in plain English. The Bhagavad Gita is a 700-verse philosophical dialogue set on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Warrior Prince Arjuna stands there, paralyzed by grief and moral conflict before a devastating war that will pit family against family. His charioteer is none other than Lord Krishna himself. What unfolds is Krishna's counsel to a man in total crisis. Counsel that explores the core questions of duty or dharma, the eternal nature of the self, the Atman, and the practical paths of action or karma yoga, knowledge, jnana yoga, and devotion, bhakti yoga. It builds to a staggering vision of cosmic reality and ultimate liberation or moksha. Crucially, this is not a war manual. It is a guide to living with clarity amid life's inevitable battles, the ones we all fight when the world feels like it's collapsing around us. As Sri Shankaracharya explains in his 8th century commentary, the earliest one still in existence, and I quote, "This famous Gita Sastra is the epitome of the essentials of the whole Vedic teaching, and its meaning is very difficult to understand." He wrote his work precisely because, to the ordinary person, the Gita can seem to teach contradictory doctrines, yet it resolves everything through knowledge of the immutable self. That same despondency Arjuna feels, it's the same paralysis many of us feel today when headlines scream about escalating conflict in Iran or another round of AI-driven layoffs at firms like Salesforce or KPMG. Now, a quick historical lens to ground us. The Gita forms part of a great Indian epic, the Mahabharata, specifically chapters 25 to 42 of the Bhishma Parva. Scholarly dating places its composition roughly between the 5th century BCE and the 2nd century CE, though tradition attributes it to the sage Vyasa in remote antiquity. It beautifully synthesizes Vedic rituals, Upanishadic philosophy, and epic storytelling into one unified teaching on the nature of reality, right action, and the divine. As Swami Chidbhavananda puts it in his accessible 20th century commentary, the Gita is enshrined in the Mahabharata, not as an add-on, but as its living heart. It turns the epic's vast narrative into a practical manual for anyone facing the battlefield of life. This brings us to why the Gita matters so profoundly in Hindu cultural and religious practice, and why it still speaks directly to us in the West today. It is universally revered as the Song of the Lord. Bhagavad Gita literally means that. Hindu tradition calls it the essence, the milk of the Upanishads, which are likened to cows. When the Upanishads are compared to cows, the Bhagavad Gita takes the position of their milk. You don't need to wrestle with the entire herd when the nourishing milk is right there. It forms 1/3 of the Prasthanatraya, the scriptural trinity, alongside the Upanishads and the Brahma Sutras. Together, they are the ultimate authority on Hindu philosophy. As Chidbhavananda emphasizes, these 3 books constitute the final authority on scriptural matters. There is no conflict of views among these 3. For more than 2 billion people across millennia, the Gita is alive. Families recite it daily in homes and temples. It is central to festivals like Gita Jayanti. It shapes art, literature, music, dance, ethics, and personal conduct. It offers practical guidance for every stage of life, from student to householder to retiree, and it remains a living, recited scripture, not a dusty historical relic. In the words of the Ramakrishna lineage commentary, it is inseparable from life itself, an allegory for the inner battlefield where good and evil tendencies clash every single day. Finally, how did this ancient Indian text travel all the way to us here in the West, and why does that journey matter for the crises we face right now? The first English translation appeared in 1785 by Charles Wilkins. It quickly influenced 19th century transcendentalists like Emerson and Thoreau, as well as the Theosophists. Scholarly editions kept it alive, but the real explosion came in the 20th century through a remarkable figure. A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, the founder of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, or ISKCON. Born in 1896, Prabhupada arrived in New York in 1965 at the age of 69 with virtually no money or contacts. Yet he translated and commented on the Gita as Bhagavad Gita as it is, first published by Macmillan in 1968 and revised in 1972. His devotional, literal rendering, complete with detailed purports, made the text accessible and bhakti-centered for Western ears. Through global lecture tours, the magazine Back to Godhead, and the establishment of ISKCON temples, he turned the Gita into a countercultural phenomenon amid the turmoil of the 60s and 70s. Millions of copies were sold. Millions of Westerners encountered its teachings for the first time. Prabhupada showed that the Gita is not confined to one culture or era. It is universal medicine for the soul. And that is precisely why we're spending time with it today. Whether you're watching geopolitical realignments and energy shocks from the 2026 Iran war unfold on your screen, or you're a professional staring at an AI-generated layoff notice that threatens your entire sense of identity and purpose, the Gita meets you exactly where Arjuna stood, in the fog of despondency, offering not escape, but clarity, resilience, and hope. The text opens with Arjuna's crisis. The warrior prince stands between two armies, paralyzed by grief, moral conflict, and the horror of kin slaughtering kin. Over the next 18 chapters, Krishna responds not with quick fixes, but with a masterful weave of Sankhya, the clear knowledge of reality, yoga, disciplined practice, and Vedanta, the culmination of all Vedic wisdom. Here's the framework in plain terms. Suffering, the Gita teaches, arises from moha, delusion, and our desperate attachments to fleeting things, bodies, outcomes, status, even our own sense of I did this. Resilience blooms through equanimity, that unshakable steadiness of mind, and detached action, doing your duty without being chained to the fruits. And hope? Hope surges from the direct realization of the immortal self, the Atman that never dies, and the grace of the divine that meets us exactly where we are. This isn't escape from the battlefield, it's transformation on it. Now, to bring these themes alive with crystal clarity, I'm drawing straight from 4 landmark commentaries that have guided millions. Each offers its own lens, yet all illuminate the same eternal light. Let me introduce them to you one by one. First, the earliest and most foundational, Sri Shankaracharya's commentary, written in the 8th century in the Advaita Vedanta tradition. As the publisher's note in the edition we're using explains, Shankaracharya composed it because to the laity it appears to teach diverse and quite contradictory doctrines. He saw the Gita as an epitome of the essentials of the whole Vedic teaching and set out to reveal its precise, unified meaning. Shankaracharya zeroes in on jnana yoga, the yoga of knowledge, as the direct highway to supreme bliss and moksha, liberation. Karma yoga, the yoga of selfless action, is the essential preparation for those still caught in worldly delusion. He walks us through Arjuna's despondency in chapter 1, showing how knowledge of the immutable self dissolves grief. Key passages highlight endurance as the mark of a wise person, equanimity in pleasure and pain, and for the fully enlightened, the renunciation of works altogether. In short, Shankaracharya hands us the sharp sword of discernment. See the unreal as unreal, and suffering loses its grip. Next, the beautifully practical voice of Swami Chidbhavananda from the 20th century Ramakrishna lineage. His English translation and commentary is designed to be inseparable from daily life itself. He frames the entire Gita within the scriptural trinity, the Upanishads, Brahma Sutras, and the Bhagavad Gita, calling the Gita the milk extracted from the Upanishadic cows. Chidbhavananda reads the battlefield as an allegory of the inner war between our higher and lower tendencies. Arjuna becomes the archetype of every human being's weaknesses: doubt, fear, excessive attachment. The Gita, he says, is a manual for personality development, a step-by-step guide to steady progress amid worldly problems. He draws out Krishna's teachings on karma sannyasa, renunciation in action, dhyana yoga, meditation, and bhakti, devotion. Divine traits versus demonic ones become practical checklists for daily living. For Chidbhavananda, the Gita is not ancient history. It is a living companion for anyone facing inner or outer chaos. Third, the rich devotional stream from the Dvaita Vedanta or Madhva tradition. We're drawing on His Holiness Sri Raghavendra Tirtha's Gita Vivrutti, compiled from lectures by His Holiness Sri Vidyasagara Madhava Tirtha. This commentary shines with bhakti, loving surrender, and offers detailed chapter-by-chapter application. It presents the Gita as a practical treatise on overcoming human frailties, Arjuna's grief and delusion being the prime example. Through surrender to the Lord, discernment of Kshetra and Kshetrajna, the field and its knower, and contemplation of the Lord's glories, we rise above suffering. The four yogas, karma, jnana, dhyana, and bhakti, become clear interlocking paths that lead to mukti, liberation, and ultimate unity with the divine. Raghavendra's approach is warm, accessible, and relentlessly practical. Apply this today in your own Kurukshetra and watch resilience and hope unfold. Finally, the visionary modern synthesis of Sri Aurobindo in his essays on the Gita. Written in the early 20th century from the integral yoga perspective, these two series of essays weave action, love, and knowledge into a dynamic, evolutionary spirituality. Aurobindo sees the Gita as revealing the divine teacher, the mystery of avatarhood, the world spirit at work, and the supreme secret itself. He stresses equality, samatha, the divine worker who acts without ego, the transcendence of the three gunas, and the thrilling possibility of a life lived in the world, not away from it. For Aurobindo, the Gita is no static scripture. It is a living call to spiritual evolution perfectly suited to modern crises. It invites us to become instruments of the divine in the very midst of geopolitical storms and technological upheavals. 4 commentaries, 1 timeless message. Suffering is real, but it is not final. Resilience is cultivated through equanimity and detached duty. Hope rests in the immortal self and the grace that never abandons us. As we move into how these teachings speak directly to the 2026 Iran war's moral fog and the AI-driven disruption ripping through white-collar careers, remember, the Gita does not promise an end to the battlefield. It promises we can stand on it with clarity, courage, and an unshakable inner light. So we turn now to the question that matters most for us here in the West in 2026. How does this 700-verse dialogue speak directly to the 2 defining crises shaping our lives right now? First, a quick note on context. Because the Gita wasn't written for us, it was composed for an ancient Indian audience steeped in dharma, the idea of sacred duty, varna, one's place in the social order and cyclical time, and a worldview where warfare itself was woven into cosmic order. As Sri Shankaracharya notes, the Gita is an epitome of the essentials of the whole Vedic teaching, yet its meaning can appear contradictory to the laity until clarified through knowledge of the immutable self. In contrast, we Western middle-class professional types live in a secular, hyper-individualistic culture obsessed with linear progress, personal achievement, and material success. Our self-worth is often tied to LinkedIn profiles, salary bands, and the 24-hour news cycle that amplifies every geopolitical tremor into existential dread. Professional identity is identity now. Media-amplified global anxiety is our daily soundtrack. Yet the Gita doesn't ask us to abandon our world. It invites us to transform our inner response to it. That bridge is what we're crossing today. As Sri Aurobindo writes in his essays on the Gita, the text reveals the divine teacher, avatarhood, the world spirit, and the supreme secret, calling us into a dynamic spirituality that transcends the gunas and envisions divine life in the world, not escape from it. This non-materialist framework has repeatedly offered Westerners tools for moral conflict, detachment from outcomes, and a vision of unity beyond surface divisions. In times of rapid change, it has broadened perspectives on resilience, and that is precisely what it offers us now. Let's bring this into our first crisis, the 2026 Iran war. Picture the opening scene of the Gita. The armies are arrayed on the field of Kurukshetra. Arjuna, the greatest warrior, surveys his kinsmen, teachers, and friends on the opposing side. He is paralyzed.
My limbs fail me, my mouth is parched, my body shivers, my hair stands on end. Gandiva slips from my hand. I see only evil omens. I do not see any good in killing my own kinsmen in battle.
As Swami Chidbhavananda explains, Arjuna becomes the archetype of every human weakness, doubts, fears, excessive attachment, and the Gita itself is an allegory of the inner battlefield of good versus evil tendencies. It is a manual for personality development amid worldly problems. Now overlay 2026. U.S. Israeli strikes on Iranian missile sites, leadership targets, and infrastructure began on February 28th. Retaliatory missile and drone barrages followed. Energy shocks ripple through global markets, families are displaced, the moral weight of distant conflict lands on our screens every morning. Civilian casualties, economic fallout, the realignment of alliances. We feel Arjuna's despondency, moral paralysis over violence, familial and national ties pulled taut, fear of widespread destruction, and raw uncertainty about what comes next. Sri Shankaracharya's commentary cuts through this. He teaches that knowledge of the immutable self eradicates misery. Endurance is a condition of wisdom. Equanimity in pleasure and pain is the mark of the wise. The body is transient. The self is not. Krishna reminds Arjuna that just action, dharma in crisis, must be performed without attachment to results.
The contacts of the senses, O son of Kunti, giving heat and cold, pleasure and pain, are transitory. Endure them, Bharata. The man whom these do not afflict is fit for immortality.
And later, the cosmic vision of chapter 11, the world spirit, reveals the impermanence of entire worlds. As Sri Aurobindo describes it, this is the Gita's living call to spiritual evolution suited to modern crises. We see the divine order in apparent chaos. The text does not preach pacifism, it frames endurance and hope through equanimity and the recognition that the self is untouched by the battlefield. In the Iran war's volatility and ethical dilemmas, that perspective becomes a lifeline. Now turn to our second crisis, AI disruption of white-collar work. Record unemployment among bachelor's degree holders, software engineers, consultants, lawyers, administrators watching their roles automated overnight. The identity crisis is real. Purpose evaporates when the career you built your life around suddenly vanishes. Wage stagnation follows. The middle-class ladder feels broken. Here again, Arjuna's paralysis mirrors ours. What is my dharma now? The Gita's distinction between the eternal self and transient actions is revolutionary. As His Holiness Sri Raghavendra Tirtha's Gita Vivruti, compiled from lectures, emphasizes, the text is a treatise on overcoming human frailties. Arjuna's grief and delusion, through surrender, discernment of the field and knower, and realization of the Lord's glories, lead to unity with the divine. Krishna's teaching on karma yoga is crystal clear. Perform your nature-based duty without attachment to the fruits. The action itself is your offering. The outcome belongs to the cosmos.
You have a right to action alone, never to its fruits. Let not the fruits of action be your motive, nor let your attachment be to inaction.
Sri Shankaracharya elaborates, works are for the unenlightened. The enlightened resort to jnana yoga, knowledge of the immutable self. yet even the wise act for the welfare of the world, setting an example. Swami Chidbhavananda calls this the inseparability of the Gita from life itself. In the AI age, this liberates us from ego-driven attachment. Your coding skills, your legal briefs, your management reports, these are transient actions. The self behind them is eternal. Adaptation is not failure, it is dharma in new form. Non-despondency arises when we detach from the fruits of obsolete careers and discover renewed meaning beyond professional titles. Aurobindo's integral yoga vision is especially potent here. The Gita reveals the possibility of divine life in the world, an evolutionary spirituality that meets technological upheaval head-on. So whether we face the smoke of geopolitical firestorms or the quiet erasure of white-collar roles by algorithms, the Bhagavad Gita does not offer escape, it offers clarity amid life's inevitable battles. Arjuna rose from despondency to resolute action. We can too by seeing the impermanence of bodies and careers, by cultivating equanimity, by acting from dharma without clinging to outcomes, and by glimpsing the world spirit that holds it all. That is the hope and resilience the Gita extends to us in 2026. We've stood with Arjuna on the blood-soaked battlefield of Kurukshetra. We've heard Krishna's voice cut through despair, through moral paralysis, through the very kind of suffering that feels all too familiar in April 2026. The Bhagavad Gita does not promise an end to wars or layoffs. It does not wave away U.S. Israeli strikes on Iranian infrastructure, retaliatory barrages, energy shocks, or the mass white-collar displacements at firms like we've mentioned before. What it offers is something far more radical and enduring, hope and resilience forged in the fire of action itself. From Sri Shankaracharya's earliest extant commentary, the one he wrote because the Gita seemed to the laity to teach diverse and quite contradictory doctrines, we learn that this 700-verse dialogue is nothing less than an epitome of the essentials of the whole Vedic teaching. Jnana Yoga reveals the immutable self beyond the body count of war or the resume that AI can delete in a single quarter. Karma Yoga is the bridge for the rest of us. Act without attachment, endure without despondency. Swami Chidbhavananda, in his luminous English rendering, reminds us that the Gita stands as the milk of the Upanishads within the scriptural trinity. It is no dusty relic, it is an allegory of the inner battlefield where good and evil tendencies clash daily. Arjuna's doubts, fears, and excessive attachments are our doubts when missiles light up the sky over the Middle East, or when the career we spent 20 years building is automated overnight. The Gita, he says, is a manual for personality development. Steady progress amid worldly problems, not escape from them. Sri Raghavendra Tirtha's Gita Vivruti takes us chapter by chapter into bhakti and the 4 yogas that lead to unity with the divine. It shows how surrender, discernment of the field and the knower, and realization of the Lord's glories dissolve human frailties. In chapter 18, the yoga of liberation by renunciation, we see sannyasa and tyaga explained not as quitting the fight, but as renouncing the ego's claim on outcomes. That is the precise medicine for a white-collar professional watching their role vanish, and for a citizen watching the world realign in real time. And Sri Aurobindo, in his essays on the Gita, presents the text as a living call to spiritual evolution suited to modern crises. He synthesizes works, love, and knowledge into integral yoga, the possibility of divine life in the world, not away from it. Equality in success and failure, the divine worker who acts from the world spirit, transcendence of the gunas. These are not ancient abstractions. They are blueprints for the Western middle class navigating geopolitical volatility and technological upheaval. Let me leave you with this section, with one final, quiet, dramatized reading. Krishna speaking directly to the paralyzed warrior and to every one of us today.
Perform your prescribed duty, Arjuna, with equipoise, abandoning all attachment to success and failure alike. Such equanimity is called yoga.
That equanimity is the hope the Gita offers, not the hope that the Iran conflict ends tomorrow or that AI stops advancing. The hope that, even on the battlefield of life, whether literal missiles or algorithmic obsolescence, clarity and inner steadiness are possible. The eternal self remains untouched. Your dharma remains yours to fulfill, and the divine, in whatever form you can receive it, walks beside you. That is the enduring capacity of this ancient song. It transforms the very suffering Western professionals face right now into the raw material of liberation. In the next episode, we turn to the Stoic philosophers, especially the Emperor Marcus Aurelius and the freed slave Epictetus. We'll explore how their radical distinction between what is within our control and what is not equips us with unbreakable resilience when geopolitical realignments shake the global order and AI continues to rewrite the rules of white-collar work. If the Gita taught us equanimity in action, the Stoics will show us freedom in acceptance. You won't want to miss it. This episode drew its authenticity directly from 4 source commentaries. The Bhagavad Gita with the commentary of Sri Shankaracharya, translated by Allahi Mahadeva Sastri, the Bhagavad Gita by Swami Chidbhavananda, the Bhagavad Gita based on His Holiness Sri Raghavendra Tirtha's Gita Vidruti, compiled by Dr. Giridhar Bore, and essays on the Gita by Sri Aurobindo. Full credits, links, and reading recommendations are in the show notes. If today's exploration of hope and resilience in the Bhagavad Gita landed for you, if it shifted even 1 degree of fear into steadiness, please do 2 things. Leave a quick rating or review wherever you listen, and share this episode with 1 colleague, friend, or family member who's feeling the weight of these times. Drop me a line on the socials, everything's under Dragonstone Astrology, or in the comments. How is the Gita helping you stand firm right now? Your stories become the next episode's heartbeat. Until we meet again on the battlefield of life or the construction site that is my studio, stay clear, stay steady, and remember, the chariot is still moving.